Hello, everyone. Today we'll be continuing to read from the book A Nest for Celeste, a story about art, inspiration, and the meaning of home, written and illustrated by Henry Cole and published by Catherine Taken Books, an imprint of HarperCollins Publisher. So we last left off on chapter 10, right? Where Celeste had made a giant mess of the dining room after Joseph put her in his pocket. So now she's back in his pocket, right? And they've left the scene. And now we're moving on to chapter 11, a portrait. The next afternoon, Joseph stood by the bedroom window, hands in his pockets, listening to the pulsing drone of the cicadas in the magnolias outside. Downstairs, he could hear Audubon instructing Eliza in the parlor. They were in the middle of a dance lesson. So here we see on the first page of this chapter, Eliza, which is the girl that lives here, right, being instructed by Audubon, okay? So he's the adult character that works with Joseph, right? And he's known for his drawings of different birds. And one, and two, and one, and no, Miss Eliza, the left foot, not the right foot. Please concentrate. You want the young men for miles around to come and admire your talents on the dance floor, yes? Notes from the pianoforte began again. Joseph had spent all day working on his botanical drawings. Sheets of discarded paper, covered with attempted sketches, littered the floor. He looked at Celeste. Little one, I need inspiration. He pulled a cotton bandana from his hip pocket, then folded and twisted it into a bowl-shaped nest for Celeste. Here you go, he said, sharpening a pencil with his pocket knife. You just sit there and take a nap. But Celeste couldn't sleep. She watched as Joseph started to sketch her. He began with a soft, arching line, the contour of her back. Then a second line swept over the first, hinting at her tail. You've got such beautiful eyes, little one, Joseph remarked. He studied her face and sketched out the outlines of her ears and eyes. Details followed, the white whiskers and pink nose, the tiny toes tucked under, soft and cream-colored. You can see little Celeste all curled up in his bandana. With the side of his pencil, he shaded in the background of the bandana and the soft lines of her fur. He chose a softer, darker leaded pencil and added still more details. Celeste watched as her eyes in the drawing became darker and more alive, the inner curves and shadows of her ears more prominent. Joseph took an eraser and touched certain places of the paper, creating highlights. The whole portrait took only minutes. Celeste could see that it was an exact likeness, with a warmth and spirit, and just enough details to show it was her, Celeste. With a soft pencil, Joseph signed his name along the edge of a shadow. Hey, he laughed, you should sign your name too, little one. After all, you're the subject matter, and I can't think of a better subject. Using the blade of his knife, he shaved off some graphite dust from one of the softer pencil leads. He carefully gathered up Celeste, rubbed the bottom of one of her paws in the gray powder, and then gently pressed her paw to the paper, next to his own signature. Here, Joseph said, this is for being a good model. He reached into his trouser pockets and fished out a peanut. Your favorite. Celeste sat in the bandana, contentedly nibbling the nut and gazing at her portrait. So there we see Celeste with her drawing, and I think there we can see her tiny little footprints right near Joseph's name. right? So there's the drawing of her, and she's looking at it right now. Chapter 12, Pigeons. She awoke during the heat of a lazy afternoon and poked her head out of Joseph's pocket. They were in the shade of a magnolia, which is a kind of tree, and Joseph was sketching. Celeste casually looked to the north and saw a massive cloud in the distance. It spread low against the horizon like a gray smudge. A storm is coming, Celeste thought, looking at the sky as it darkened and thickened. That's odd, he heard Joseph murmur to himself. He had noticed the same cloud. No thunder or lightning flashes. They sat watching the cloud swiftly approach. There was an eerie quality to it that Celeste couldn't quite put her paw on. It wasn't like the storms that she had seen come and go during the summer. There was no scent of rain pushing ahead of this cloud, no distant rumbling or shifting of air pressure. This cloud undulated and twisted. It spread and waved and rippled. They heard yelling. Several men were racing across the yard, pointing and gesturing at the cloud. "Here they come," they shouted. A few of them were hauling logs and dead branches to an open field, one after another, making huge piles. Still, the cloud came closer. The men dotted themselves across the field, and Celeste noted now that they were all carrying guns. "Get ready," they called to one another. And then suddenly the cloud was upon them. Celeste looked up, mesmerized, as it became a living thing. The endless puffs of cloud became enormous pulsing flocks of birds. Millions and millions of them. There's that cloud, right? That cloud was really a huge flock of birds flying through the air. Oh my gosh. The flocks stretched from horizon to horizon. Celeste gaped open-mouthed as she saw the entire sky filled with layer upon layer of flapping wings. Their droppings pattered to the ground like wet snow. Some flew near enough for her to see them clearly, graceful and strong, with rapid wing beats and long, pointy tails. Their feathers were a beautiful mossy gray, with iridescent highlights that shimmered violet, green, and copper. The beating of millions of wings created a rush of wind. The sound was astonishing, too, just like the wind from a thunderstorm. Joseph seemed just as excited. "Hello, hello," he called up, waving at the huge flock, and Celeste waved too. The sight of it so exhilarated and amazed her, she wanted to be a part of it. Exhilarated kind of means like exciting. It has the EX in the front, like excite. So exhilarated means like your heart's bumping, you're so excited to be a part of this, right? You're just really in a really high up, hyper kind of mood. You're really exhilarated, okay? Then they heard the guns. They were firing from every direction with blasts of buckshot that brought down several of the beautiful birds at once. Celeste saw hundreds, then thousands of them dropping from the sky every minute. The flock never changed its path. It kept moving in the same direction, seemingly never ending. A river of birds kept flowing overhead. Wave after wave were shot, and the birds fell like hailstones. Celeste smelled smoke. Looking down, she saw the piles of logs had been set afire. Thousands more of the birds were being choked as they flew through the smoke from the fires and were dropping to the fields below. Their bodies were collected and thrown into wagons. The men were laughing and shouting, "We're eating good tonight," and "Nothing I love more than fried pigeon." So now we know what kind of bird it is, right? Pigeons. Joseph had heard stories about the massive flocks of pigeons. The birds were called passenger pigeons, but he'd never witnessed one. And he'd seen hunting before, of course, but never as part of a wholesale slaughter like this. I'm sickened, little one, he said to Celeste. Celeste burrowed down in the pocket and tried covering her ears, but she could still hear the sounds of the wings and the shots and the shouts. The flock flew overhead all night and most of the following morning. All right, and that's where we're stopping for today. It's kind of a sad place to stop, but it's given us a lot to think about, right? So Joseph, even though he's seen hunting before, when it's so many birds being hunted at the same time, he definitely gets a little upset, right? He cares a lot about animals and about nature around him, right? We're going to have to see what happens next with Joseph and Celeste and the rest of this group of characters, okay? So I'll see you tomorrow. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.